Yeah, that's
thank
what
you,
I thought
Beth.
too. So, yeah, good turnout. Okay, I'm gonna call the meeting to order, everyone. We'll start with introductions. Dale Stein, Chair. Erica?
Erica Goodman, voting member.
Dave?
Dave Rass, Vice Chair, voting member.
Scott?
Scott Ryan, NYACD rep, voting member.
Yeah, this morning Darren's not going to be with us for today, but we got a quorum anyway, so we'll be fine. Brian, you want to continue on introductions?
Sure, love to. I will start with advisory members. Ag and Markets.
Good morning, everyone. Tim Sweeney, Ag and Markets.
Hey, Tim.
Morning.
Howdy.
Good morning.
Morning.
Cornell Cal. All right, we'll come back to Cornell Cal. Cornell Cooperative Extension. Okay, we'll also come back to Cornell Cooperative Extension. CDEA.
Sorry, Dustin Lewis. How you doing?
Good morning, Dustin. Doing
morning.
great, thank you. All right, DEC.
Naseem Kumar, Division of Water. Good morning.
Good morning, Naseem. Anybody joining you today from DEC? Okay, thank you. Department of Health.
Morgan Tarbell.
Good morning, Morgan.
And I just saw Paul just joined, so.
Okay. Good morning, Paul. Are you with us? Still connecting? Thank you. Department of State. Anyone from Department of State? Okay. USDA, NRCS.
Good morning, Brian Blake Lover. And also joining us today is Paula Beckman.
All right. Well, good morning, Blake, and good morning, Paula. Thank you for joining. And student ESS.
Good morning, Brian. This is Steve.
Hey, good morning, Steve. All right. Just going back to it, am I missing anybody? I might have connected a little late.
Hi, Brian. This is Paul Kazmarzik. I came on a couple minutes late.
Wonderful. Good morning, Paul. All right. Anybody else? Okay, we'll go through, do a staff roll call. Victor?
Good morning, Victor Giacomo, State Committee Regional Field Staff for Western New York.
Good morning, Victor. PJ?
This is PJ, Region 2 AEA for Central New York.
Good morning, PJ. Greg Albrecht?
Good morning, everybody. Greg Albrecht, AIM-based Program Coordinator.
Morning, Greg. Ryan Cunningham is on leave this week. Won't be with us. Ron Bush?
Good morning, Ron Bush, CNMP Specialist with the State Committee.
Good morning, Ron. Brendan Jordan?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Brendan Jordan, CNMP Specialist with the State Committee.
Good morning, Brendan. Scott is at a board meeting today, won't be with us. Ben Luskin?
Good morning, Ben Luskin, Region 5 AEA with the Southeast Region.
Good morning, Ben. Jennifer Clifford?
Good morning, Jennifer Clifford, Climate Resilient Farming Program Manager.
Good morning, Jennifer. Jason Kokinos?
Good morning, everyone. Jason Kokinos, State Committee, Data Analyst.
Good morning, Jason. Bethany Bizdu.
Good morning, everybody. Bethany Bizdu, Ag Non-Point Source Program Manager.
Good morning, Bethany. Tim Clark.
Yep. Good morning, everybody. Tim Clark. I am an engineer.
All right. Good morning, Tim, the engineer. Good to see you this morning. Lauren Przorski.
Good morning, Lauren Przorski. I'm the ABM Program Manager.
Good morning, Lauren. All right. Am I missing anybody? Okay, back to you, Dale.
Thanks, Brian. Review and approve minutes. Anyone else? Any changes, additions, corrections from anyone? Could I get a motion to approve?
So move.
Second?
Second.
Second.
We'll go to voting. Erica?
Aye.
Dave?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Thank you. Correspondence, Brian?
All right. Well, we always put correspondence on the agenda, but I actually do not have any official correspondence to bring to the committee's attention today. I will say a little bit of good news. We just learned late yesterday that the Division of Budget has approved our list of claims for payment. So happy to report that the blackout period is now over, and we will start processing claims again. So we did put a list together preliminarily for both May and June, and Maureen Irish will be working with program managers to update that list and get that submitted by the end of the week. So that's some good news on the budget front.
Excellent.
We are still waiting for a number of approvals for the release of programs. They're called B1184s, so those forms are still at the Division of Budget, and there are signs that they are starting to approve those, so we're hopeful that by the next state committee meeting we'll have some good news on that front too.
Great. Move on to the ABM program. Lauren?
Okay, good morning, everyone. Let's see if we can get this to work.
Excellent.
While Lauren is getting that set up, I also just want to welcome all the conservation districts and partners, district board members who have joined us today as well. Thank you all. We'll make sure we have your name for the minutes. I really appreciate everybody's attendance today.
Am I here? Hello?
A second ago you were. Right now the screen's blank.
Okay. Well, you can hear me now because nobody was hearing me before.
No.
All right, let me try sharing again.
Okay, we can hear you now, loud and clear.
All right, I'm halfway there.
The screen was on and couldn't hear you. Now it's the other way around.
Yeah, all right. I want to stop sharing. It's asking me to stop sharing. So it says I am sharing.
Yep, it says we're viewing your screen, but it's just blank at the moment. Maybe it's still loading.
Share content. No, it says.
Oh, let's see.
Is it there? Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and see if I can reshare. About that.
Yeah, we are now.
Sorry about this. Okay, now I see everybody. How's that? Can you hear me?
Yep, you're
We
in.
can hear you and we can see the presentation.
All right. So I am not the technology specialist for the division, but I am the EBM program manager. And EBM stands for Ecosystem-Based Management. So, they all right in the middle of my screen. Anyways, ecosystem-based management is actually funded through the Ocean and Great Lakes Initiative. That is a line item in the Environmental Protection Fund. It started in 2006 when the Ocean and Great Lakes Ecosystem Conservation Council was formed. The Ecosystem Conservation Council was, and what the Ocean and Great Lakes Initiative was intended to do was to bring together all the state agencies that had jurisdiction over land use and have us work together and cooperate on common goals to progress with our initiatives. The Ocean Great Lakes Council was co-chaired or is co-chaired by the Department of Environmental Conservation and the New York State Department of State. So what is EBM? EBM is, and I could read the definition, you can read the definition. Unfortunately, I have something blocking my screen, so I can get rid of it. There it is. Okay. So EBM is a comprehensive, place-based approach to resource management, distinctive from traditional approaches that manage resources individually. EBM recognizes that people are an integral part of an ecosystem and that ecosystems are vital in supporting human life. So that last sentence of the definition, I have really come to appreciate over the last few years working with EBM. It is basically our traditional watershed approach to conservation, but it does recognize the importance of the natural resources to the people, to the economy, and that people rely on those natural resources for their livelihoods and for their recreation. And that it's nice. It allows me, and I'll explain it later, it does allow a little bit more flexibility in how we approach things. So what are the priorities of EBM? They are water and land, which is the traditional way in the Division of Land and Water that we approach things. It also has energy, the economy, climate change, and capacity building. And we've kind of done projects, I'll touch on it, that hit on all of those priorities. So even though we say ecosystem-based management, over the years, we've really kind of transitioned to just going by the line item to give recognition to that line item in the EPF budget that it is the Ocean and Great Lakes Initiative. So more recently, we've started referring to it as the Ocean Great Lakes Initiative rather than EBM. But this is the way at the Department of Agriculture and Markets that we have approached it. To begin with, how do we receive funding? Every year, there's the line item in the EPF. And a few years ago, it began to increase pretty significantly. There was a jump. So it's usually ballpark around 13 million. So for our purposes, I will propose a project idea. I usually look for something that is not currently funded under one of our existing programs, or if there is a particular concern or a priority watershed that we want to work on, I'll pitch ideas for that. It is approved internally and then it is sent on to the partners. In that proposal, we target how does this fit in with the Ocean and Great Lakes report that the Conservation Council had originally prepared. And DEC also prepared a Great Lakes Action Agenda. So how does our projects fit in with the Great Lakes Action Agenda as well? Then we do cost and deliverables, and what is the future implications of the project. The projects that I propose or the department proposes, they are pilots and demonstrations and new initiatives. So by that, I mean, there's nothing in there that is continual funding. So how does this differ from our existing programs is that through the Ocean Great Lakes Initiative, we're able to, unlike Ag Non-Point Source, we can target watersheds that are a priority. We can target specific VMPs or practice systems that we want to implement. We can target specific types of agriculture. It is still natural resource focused, but we are able, it doesn't always have to be the only thing that we look at proposals for. There can be the economic benefit involved with the project. Capacity building. We did fund a couple years ago the Western New York Soil Health Alliance to build capacity for improving the implementation of soil health practices. And then we can use it internally if there's something lacking or needs to be updated in our existing programs to be more compliant with the goals of EBM. And we've done a little bit of all of these, which I will recap quick. When EBM first started, or the Ocean Great Lakes Initiative, there was 2 demonstration areas. One of them was the Great South Bay on Long Island, and the other one was the Sandy Creeks watershed in Jefferson County. There wasn't a lot of agriculture in Great South Bay. We focused on the Sandy Creeks in the Department of Ag and Markets. And the Sandy Creeks was chosen because it was considered a pristine, intact watershed. And what can we do to preserve this? When it first started, the first project, and I should go back and say this was before I started with EBM, but DEC and the other partners involved, they worked with, and Dave Brass might know more specifics, but they worked with the Tug Hill Commission and I believe the Nature Conservancy and local stakeholders, and they prepared a report or a plan for this EBM, and they identified what the local priorities were. So under that, buffers was important. At the same time, we were rolling out the New York State CREP program, and there was a little hesitancy to be involved with the CREP program. So we used the first pilot for riparian buffers was how can we overcome some of the obstacles in the New York State CREP with the ecosystem-based management funding. So we funded complementary practices. So if an area was a priority for buffers on farms, we could either fund upland practices that would improve the buffer, maybe it was just access, animal access, changing practices that were not eligible under CREP, but it made the system work for the farmer. So we could pay with that with ecosystem-based management. It also allowed us to restore stream banks so that they would be eligible for CREP. Jefferson County Soil and Water did a great job. I believe there was 8 buffers installed under that first initiative. And I am going back a while, so I'm trying to remember. So then we did a second pilot, which was a pollution prevention initiative. Now that was at the time where soil health was just becoming the new discussion. The Soil and Water District did have a seed drill, but it was small, and they said that a lot of the farms were hesitant to use it because their acreage was large and it was just not conducive for them. So we purchased a larger grain drill for the district to then loan out, and they did cover cropping. At the same time, EPA was doing inspections on CAFO farms, and there was a lot of talk about the fuel storage and that there was not secondary containment. So we were able to fund secondary fuel storage containment on 12 CAFO farms in the watershed. The third pilot we did there, and this was actually proposed by Department of State. They wanted to continue the stream restoration, and then they were also wanted something economic, so they had a small proposal for cow comfort improvements, and it was to do mini grants. In the end, the cow comfort, it didn't really work out. They did not budget enough, but they passed the money to Ag and Markets. We administered it for them. The cow comfort was, they did, like I said, they didn't budget enough money. Really, they were only able to buy a few fans for ventilation. But anyways, we rolled the leftover money into stream restoration, and we were able to do like another 3 or 4, or the Soil and Water District was able to. And then the final, at that point, EBM was kind of transitioning into other watersheds, but we did go back and fund one more pilot project there. And I looked at that plan that the Tug Hill Commission and the Nature Conservancy and all those stakeholders had done. And, having worked the first half of my career with the department in the Hudson Valley and knowing how many times I've sat on committees to develop plans and to, develop strategies and then see them sit there. So I really wanted to make sure that we continued to help implement that so everyone who was involved, could feel like it was worthwhile. So I worked with Christine to develop a project that hit several areas that were considered local priorities. So we continued the buffers, we continued the cover cropping, but also the trail system throughout the Tug Hill area in the Sandy Creeks is very important to their economy. So they did 2 really nice trail restoration projects with that. So while these projects were going on, we then transferred the riparian buffer pilot to the Susquehanna watershed. They did their own, I believe it was 20 buffer systems in the Susquehanna. The pollution prevention pilot was transferred to the Schoharie Creek watershed, which was a priority because DEC had developed a watershed management plan for the Mohawk River, which at that time, it was a major watershed that did not have any watershed management plan. So DEC led the way in developing that as well. And we wanted to support that project. Another internally, so discussions pursued that we had at the time upgraded a lot of the specialty crop worksheets for AIM, but we had not had an opportunity to go back and look at our Tier 2 core worksheets. So we had funding to go back and update all the core worksheets. Bethany and Ron Bush had just started. They did a great job. Here's a couple examples. They wrote the Tier 2 information sheets that were all updated. Then there was a nice guide for AIM for financial resources that helped farmers see what kind of practices, what kind of system they were interested in implementing, and all the different state and federal programs that might be able to financially provide cost share for them. So we updated that guide, expanded it to include some forestry concerns. We printed 10,000 copies, and kudos to Judy Luttrell because somehow she managed to hand out all but like 20 of them. And hops was becoming an issue, a big a new trend there for a while. So Madison County Cooperative Extension, we were able to fund them to develop IPM guidelines for the hop producers, they did a great job. And really, if you've ever seen what they've come up with, they did nice guidebooks to pass. Really did an awesome job on that. So those last projects that I mentioned with Jefferson County and Schoharie and the Susquehanna, they were all considered single source contracts. It became a little bit more increasingly difficult on the state level, administrative wise, to get single source contracts approved. So we began to transition into the competitive grants. And this started in 2013. We did a soil health initiative with mini grants that were, I guess, at the time we had a lot of committee meetings talking about the barriers to doing conservation tillage and conservation cover crops, and why aren't more farms doing this? And, it was a lot of talk, and I thought, why don't we put it to the districts? And we offered this initiative that, unlike our normal programs that say, we'll fund this and how many of them are you going to do? It was really, you pitch an idea to us that, what do you think will work? What do you think at your county are the barriers? And create your own program. So we actually wound up doing 2 rounds of that. We funded a total of 20 projects. At the same time, Grants Gateway was coming out. The soil health grants was the pilot in Grants Gateway for our department. We're trying out that system. So in the end, the Soil Health Initiative, like I said, we funded 20 districts. They worked with 150 farms. And I should go back and mention that this was $450,000 was the amount we received for doing this. They worked with 150 farms. They implemented over 5,000 acres of conservation cover crops, 1,200 acres of conservation tillage. The soil health tests, soil tests were new. They funded 115 farms that had at least one soil health test completed. And 5 districts purchased the no-till seed drills for local farmer use. So, I think it was money well spent. So then moving on to the targeted, as I mentioned, we can use EBM to target specific watersheds. So DEC was then focusing on the Genesee River. They developed a 9 key element plan, which was EPA approved. That was the first 9 element plan in New York State approved by EPA. So to support that, we proposed doing erosion sediment control implementation grants. At the same time, to expedite the administration of contracts, we received notice that for small contracts, 10,000 or less, we could use a letter of agreement, which was a lot easier to issue than doing even a small contract. So I was interested in trying that out. So we did small mini grants, 10,000 or less, single farm applications, and it was just for field level erosion sediment control practices. I also tried a voluntary approach to match. So there was no match requirement, but match was encouraged. In the end, we did fund 51 projects through, again, 2 rounds. Whoops, I think I should go back. And the projects actually averaged 30% match. So in a lot of our grants, normally we would request 25% match minimum. So through voluntary match, we actually received a 30% match. In the outcomes of that project, we had 890 acres of conservation cover crops, over 7,000 feet of diversions, 12 wascobs, 9 terrace systems, 5 herbaceous buffer systems, 2 stream crossings, and over 8,000 feet of livestock exclusion. So in the end, some projects do wind up, costing more, and especially when they're small, sometimes, a lot of times, the farmers will, extend the project, make it a little bit more involved than it originally was. So the final after closeout was landowners actually wound up contributing 67% of voluntary cost share. And then the last part there is what I'm most proud of the districts for, is these were all 2-year contracts. So the way the letter of agreement works is that you get 50% of the awarded amount up front, and then you get the other 50% when the project closed. We had a 90% success rate for timely completion of all those 51 projects, which is really just awesome that they're all done within two years. So going by, I think all our partners, even with DEC and the districts, they all really like the erosion sediment control grants in the Genesee. In recent years, because of the harmful algal blooms, we were starting to focus a little bit more on the Finger Lakes, and DEC created the Finger Lakes Hub to help address that. So we transferred that program from the Genesee River to the Finger Lakes. So we were able to continue some funding for the Genesee River, still a priority, but also receive similar funding for the Finger Lakes. We had the first round, I think it was the year before last, the contracts went out to work on that. So we had 8 projects that were funded into the Genesee River and 17 projects in the Finger Lakes watershed. In the Finger Lakes, it was really nicely dispersed. There were some projects, I believe, on 7 of the lakes. So Brian mentioned too about the spending requests that the department has in, and we're waiting to hear. And I just heard this morning that my spending request for a second round of these erosion sediment control implementation grants was just approved. So we'll be going out shortly in the coming months. We're very appropriate, particularly with the cost of implementation right now to do that. So then we had AIM implementation for New York State Grown and Certified farms. When the New York State Grown and Certified program was rolled out, we were able to use funding to help support the farms. So farms participating in New York State Grown and Certified have to participate at least to the tier 2 level in AIM. But you don't want farms to just stop at tier 2. You want to encourage them to do tier 3 plans and to actually implement. So to help do that, we had $1.5 million. The first round funded about $1 million worth of projects, 29 projects. We did do preference points for the Great Lakes watershed because the funding is through the Ocean Great Lakes Initiative. We did preference points for farms who had GAP certification. So this is because it was very new. Grown and Certified was very new, and we were trying to encourage all farms to join the New York State Grown and Certified. So we did give preference to those who already had the GAP certification, and GAP, for anyone who's good ag practices, and it's a safe food handling that a lot of the produce, vegetable, and fruit growers need to have to market their products. And then I did voluntary match again, but this time to further encourage it, we assign preference points. So the higher level of match that you contribute, the more points you can score. So from that round, there were 7 ag chemical handling facilities, 7 irrigation systems, 7 IPM systems, which were sprayer upgrades to reduce the amount of drift from pesticide applications. 5 petroleum and oil product storage systems, secondary containment for fuel storage, 2 process wash water systems, a buffer, and then and some of these projects, the cap was 50,000. Some of the projects did implement more than one system. And then in addition, there were pollinator habitat and some conservation cover crops included in that. So the lessons I learned from that one, again, these were a 2-year contract. 20 out of the 29 projects were completed within that 2-year contract period. 5 of them were for orchards, and they were irrigation systems for replacing tree stock, but there was a shortage and a lot of the tree stock was on back order. So they did need to put in extension requests for that. So I did learn that, 3 years was actually, we could have eliminated all but one-time extension with a 3-year contract. So from that point on, I've moved to a 3-year contract period for most of our projects. The proposed match averaged 30%, and the final match for projects fell within 4 to 5% of that amount. So as I recently updated Mike and Brian on this, because EBM projects don't have that cost overrun that Ag Non-Point Source does, and I believe Ag Non-Point Source allows for the 10% contingency funds. But I think this was, a nice reassurance that the 10% contingency fund maybe is a good number to stay with for those larger projects. The second round, this was we just went to contracting this spring. The proposals were submitted last year, so they were a little delayed. I received 23 applications. We were able to fund 13 projects. The match was 27% from the proposals. For those projects, for all proposals that were received, for those that were funded, the match was again at like 30%. And this is, again, this is voluntary match. So we'll be doing, the districts will be doing 9 more ag chemical handling systems, 2 irrigation systems, 2 more fuel storage, secondary containment, 1 sprayer upgrade system for the pest management systems. There was, because New York State Grown Certified has grown so much since that first round, there's a lot more farms that are eligible. So we do have 1 rotational grazing system receive funding, and 1 more process wash water system. I really think in that second round, districts were getting a better feel of what kind of projects fit with the New York State Grown and Certified farms, primarily the vegetables and fruit farms. And I should add that we were able to use a portion of this funding at the very beginning to do AIM Tier 2 training on fruit and vegetable farms. There were a lot of districts that maybe did not have the same comfort level with working with those farms as they do with the animal farms. So we did have a nice training session for that. And then targeting specific practices. irrigation water management systems. So GAP certified farms, there's also the rollout of the food safety regulations for fruit and vegetable farms. And through that, naturally, particularly farms that irrigate with surface water hold a lot more potential for pathogens on their plants or on the produce than those farms that irrigate with the low flow or micro irrigation systems where the surface water never touches the actual edible portion of the plant. So to help with that, we propose doing the irrigation water management system. And, irrigation, when you think of it, it fits in so many portions of the priorities of EBM for, economic purposes, benefits, for climate resiliency, for environmental, for water quality. So again, to help the districts prepare, we hosted a 3-day training at SUNY Cobleskill on irrigation in general and focusing a little bit on micro irrigation. We had $700,000 to fund high efficiency irrigation systems. So it didn't necessarily have to be micro irrigation systems, but they had to be for farms who were who already had irrigation, and you had to transition to the water savings. Because again, in the Great Lakes, part of the concern is water conservation to reduce the consumption. We funded 20 projects. They were just contracted this spring as well. They'll implement 430 acres of irrigation. So that one really went well. Between the irrigation and the New York State Grown Certified, I have to say over the last year, since those funding opportunities have closed, I continue to get, almost weekly emails from farms out there who see the posting somewhere still online and they're still looking for funding help. So I think they both have a big need out there. So what's coming up next? In review right now, there's a pilot for saturated buffers. This is a new way. I think it was developed in Iowa. We had training a year ago, last March, at the symposium on saturated buffers for treating nitrates coming from tile drainage lines. So we have an upcoming pilot project on that. And as I mentioned before, round 2 of the erosion sediment control in the Genesee River and Finger Lakes. The spending request was just approved, so the RFP is written, so I'll be submitting that for review as well to move that forward. We still have an open RFA for Community Resiliency Training Program, which is for doing training to local officials on the the roadside ditch program, the emergency stream intervention program, and culvert assessment training. So there's 3 different kinds of training that districts can provide for their municipalities, and there is funding for that, and it's still open and available.
Lauren, would you be able to explain a little bit about what the saturated buffer is?
So a saturated buffer, sure. It's actually a distribution box that intercepts the outlet of the tile drain. And, it's not exact, but to me, it kind of looks like it works like a leach field. So then it has a lateral disbursement. It goes into the distribution box and laterally distributes the water subsurface and it supposedly removes up to 90% of the nitrates from
Do they
the
plants growing?
Yes. So you have not so much, the woody vegetation, but definitely herbaceous.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah. So in addition to the projects that we administer for the department, a lot of times we'll work with other partners, particularly DEC, for projects that they would like to collaborate with districts on, and they'll pass the funding through the department to fund districts. We did work with NRCS for a regional conservation partnership program application for $3 million of EQIP funding in the Genesee River, and that's just finishing up. We had done a Trees for Tribs, which is DEC's riparian buffer initiative in the Genesee watershed. The Culvert Assessment, which DEC refers to as it's the North Atlantic Aquatic Connectivity Collaborative. It's a long one. We have about 20 districts, I think, were funded for doing culvert assessments in their county. And then as part, going back with that first one, the RCPP program with NRCS, DEC is also funded or provided funded for the Genesee River Ag Program Leader. They've developed a database similar to the Susquehanna River to track BMPs on the watershed level, in addition to coordinating their coalition of conservation districts and being the point person for assisting that watershed with continued grant writing and support for the watershed. So I guess, it's a lot is going on. It's really nice to be able to, have a need, be able to use the EBM funding to focus on key issues that maybe come up, like, the harmful algal blooms, and be able to, have a source of funding that we can then use to support that and directly address concerns with agriculture. But I'll just say, I guess the biggest constraint for me is time. So each one of those projects, they're all now competitive. They all require an RFP and, like I said, writing the spending request, having them reviewed, doing contracting. And, each one, it's not rewriting. So you're starting from scratch, writing an RFP. It's time consuming, but it is definitely worth it. I think the districts have been very supportive over it. The one thing I always stress to the district is, because EBM is pilots and initiatives, there's usually only 1 or 2 years worth of funding. And there's a lot of districts who don't really like year 1 of funding because they'd rather wait and see how it goes, and they are maybe a little reluctant to apply. But if you don't apply, it's not going to be there again, and then I'm bombarded by emails of farmers who say, I'm interested in this funding, and, it's my hands are tied because the opportunity just closed, and, I don't have any guarantee for a second round. So, my encouragement is that, if you're interested, that you have to apply in the first round. But that's about all I have. Anybody has any questions?
Questions, anyone?
I will say, I think, the conservation districts, I couldn't be happier with the job they've done. I mean, they've really made the department look great, I think, with our EBM program and how we use the funding. pretty much all the funding we have is put on the ground, and it's put on the ground in a very timely manner. They're great projects. And, I think we can really be proud of the job that they've done, and they've really made the department look awesome.
Excellent.
Lauren, thank you for such a thorough presentation. So much great information. I will say that you have done the same, to administer this program over these years in a way that gets the job done, gets the job timely, efficient, effective, and Aaron put a nice comment in the chat about the erosion sediment control grants, and I've heard the same from so many other districts, and really appreciate all this great information today. Thank you for the presentation.
All right, well, thank you all.
Thank you. Next on our list is a CRF with Jason and Jennifer.
Okay, I'll start us off with the dashboard for the Climate Resilient Farming Program. There's been no update in the database since our last meeting, but as a reminder, to date in the program, there are 24 completed contracts totaling $2,197,224. There are 45 active contracts totaling $4,642,152. There are no contracts in the partial closeout state, and 4 contracts have been canceled in the history of the program, and 44 contracts are technically in the pending status, totaling $4 million. We are currently entering them into the database, and we should have them soon to report to the state committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. This is Jennifer. So we don't have any amendments this month for CRF, and the plans of work for round 5 are almost fully reviewed. So we just have a few left to finish reviewing for that. And then most of them are going to contract already, and some have been sent to districts for signature already. So those are moving along. Round 6, we still are waiting for the spending approval authority to combine the state fiscal years from, or combine 2 state fiscal years to do an to have the potential to do an $8 million round for round 6. So we're just waiting on the spending approval to do that, and I will be starting to work on the updated RFP for round 6 soon, and that'll be coming before the committee later in the fall. That's all I had for updates. If there are any questions, Jason and I would be happy to answer anything.
Questions, anyone? Thank you. Appreciate your great report, all the information you put together.
Thank you.
Ag non-point source, Jason and Bethany.
Okay. So for the agricultural non-point source abatement and control program, there have been 839 completed contracts totaling $136,462,130. That's an increase of 4 contracts since our last meeting, or $806,000. There are currently 150 active contracts in the program, totaling $53,210,340. That's a decrease of 4 contracts, totaling $1.1 million. No contracts are in the partial closeout state. 36 contracts have been canceled in the history of the program, and 46 contracts from round 26 are technically in the pending section, being uploaded into our database. Same thing, going to have those to present soon.
Thanks, Jason. Those numbers, whenever we hear them read out loud, are always so staggering, and it's so great to see. But I'll just give a quick update on round 26. As Jason mentioned, those are all kind of pending, and we're working on getting those contracts into the database. So far, of the 46 projects that were awarded, 38 plans of work have been submitted to the Albany office. Most of those plans of work have been approved and forwarded on to our fiscal management division and to council's office for review. Just as Jennifer mentioned with CRF, the Ag non-point source contracts that have been reviewed and approved by fiscal and council have been starting to get sent out to districts for signature, which is a great thing to see those moving along and getting out the door so quickly. Regarding round 27, currently round 27 of the Ag non-point source program is, the RFP is open, and we are currently accepting questions, and applications can be uploaded. I wanted to let the group know here today that just this morning, an updated Q&A document was sent out, and it has been posted on SharePoint as well as the department's website. So for any districts on the line, make sure you review those Q&A documents as they get uploaded or as they get updated and sent out. The deadline to submit questions regarding the RFP is next Monday, June 21st, and all proposals that will be submitted to round 27 of the program must be submitted and uploaded to SharePoint by 4:30 p.m. on June 28th. We are also still waiting for spending authority approval regarding round 28, and we will be starting to work on the RFP for that round very soon. Are there any questions?
Questions, anyone? If not, thank you. Very good.
Thank you.
I wanted to open a discussion with everyone today about the cost increases we've seen as a result of COVID the past year for many grant applications, and then when you finally get to the point where you may be able to work, the cost increases are way higher than what was originally projected. And there is concern in districts. I want to open a discussion with everyone. Districts' options when they run into that. Brian,
lots of districts on the line. Does anybody have an experience they'd want to share today with the committee about the escalating costs of materials and projects as a whole? Dustin, if you're on the line as well, I'm not sure if you want to lead that one off, if you have any experiences or thoughts on that subject.
Yeah, we have heard from some districts that the cost overruns are going to be a question for the new applications, because if you're applying, and you're getting cost estimates, a lot of the folks that we talked to at CDA meeting were saying they're getting told it's maybe 30 days. You've got to accept the contract and be ready to start working within 30 days. Well, if you're getting some rough ideas now about a project that they won't be even started until next spring, your cost estimates could be way off by the time you get to construction. So even for the folks that already have a contract and are looking to get into construction, they've got to have a quick turnaround on their bid process, because their bids are typically only good for 30 days or even less, depending on the location and the situation. So yeah, a lot of folks are going to need to, when they put in their cost estimates, basically take what your cost estimate is and throw an extra at least 10 to 15% on top of it just to be safe. I mean, you know, you never know. By next year, we could be back into the good old days and be back to costs that are reasonable, and your estimates will be higher than you need. But I would hate to shortchange, especially shortchange the farmer, come back and by next summer I have to tell them, hey, by the way, you know, what you thought you were paying 25% match on, you're now paying 50% or more match on. They can't absorb a hit like that typically. So I'd hate to see contracts be canceled because they just realize that with the costs, or they're going to have to wait it out and maybe do it a couple of years later, hoping that the costs will come down. But yeah, that is definitely a concern that we've heard at the Employees Association meetings, and something that it's going to be an individual district by district decision on how to do it. I don't know how you guys could do it at the state level when it's, you know, it's a year out from when you apply for these funds to when you can even start looking at taking actual bids and looking at construction. So, you know, nowadays a year out is a whole nother world.
The other, and the same, I'm hearing that the farmers are worried about being able to come up with their match with the increases increasing large enough that the match is far larger than what they originally thought. So cancellation of projects. I know what we've seen is steel has increased 100% in 1 year if you're buying steel now.
Yep.
And that's, I don't see how they can't claim inflation is only 5%. And I don't know what is number, but it's big, the increase, but it's, I don't see it going back down anytime soon.
Yep.
Just a point from our district, we definitely, for us contractors, their bids are only good for 24 hours as far as their cost estimates go. So because the prices are changing so rapidly, and really it's only the larger contractors who can purchase all the materials and stockpile them that are able to take on these projects. The smaller projects that people are, you know, contractors are doing bit by bit, they're really getting in trouble, and that goes for the farms as well. So we just anticipate that there's going to be that issue, and farms are certainly aware of that. So there's not really a way around it that I see.
If I may, from Genesee County, this is Shelley Stein. I serve on the board, and we have a project from Ag Non-Point Source that we've already got the contracts signed. We have a farm operator who was able to get good bids in other than his lumber. And they're just gonna just gone incredibly high. So the question that we wanted to raise was really in the short term, in what we have a state contract to get completed by the end of this year. And they've worked right along with this 2-year program. So it isn't that they put it off, but they're caught in this COVID economy. And is there any way that we can address that through additional funds being made available for this COVID economy on a one-time basis through maybe those other projects that are being canceled and funds being returned? That's our question from Genesee. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. Welcome. I was wondering who was marked legislature on the participant list. Good to see you. That's a really good question, and we've encountered these issues in the past, not like what we are now for sure, but it was always explained to us that we wouldn't be able to add funding to existing contracts because of how it was proposed in a competitive program. You know, with that being said, it's certainly something that's worth looking into and determining what the root of that particular rule is, and if there is other sources of funds that can be used to offset those costs. I don't have an answer other than the current one, that is no, we don't add funds to existing contracts. Unfortunately, you know, our best option is to extend and hopefully weather, whatever the conditions are, so that there is ample opportunity within a 5-year contract window to get the projects done, or to seek out federal funding to help offset the costs, or some other source of funds that can be matched with state programs. I'd like to put it also out there to our federal partners on the line today, if this is something they're also experiencing, and is there a way that, projects can be prioritized either with federal funding to support state-funded projects or vice versa. But Shelley, I would like to kind of look back at the root of those particular decisions that were made years ago, and that we're still, implementing today when it comes to adding cost to contracts. But really, the only option currently we have is to extend those projects out, and or with cancellations, we don't hold the district or the farmer in any negative way, that if the projects have to be canceled, no fault of their own, there is an opportunity to reapply for grant rounds in the future.
Thank you, Brian. We would appreciate that. Thanks.
Brian, is it even feasible to look at grant money returned? We always have some extra every year to go into the next round. Due to the COVID emergency and everything, is it feasible to look at it as maybe a 1 or 2 year program where you could reuse that money returned instead of adding it to the grant to help offset the additional costs in a couple of years of grants? Would that even be legally, would they even consider it?
We can look into it. All of our returns do get recirculated into the program. And thinking about Ag Non-Point Source here, as we have many years of administration and receive payments back and make payments out during final reports. So, and we're going to be talking about AIM 17, and that's how we are funding AIM 17 cost share projects, is recirculating a portion of those returns into the AIM-based program, and doing so at an 87.5% cost share rate, certainly capped at a certain dollar value as well. So, a small portion of funds that may not be dedicated to that program, we can look at what our options are in recirculating those funds into current contracts rather than future rounds. But, at this point, that's all we would be doing, is try to find, out some information about that and whether or not it can be done. There are other state agencies on the line today, too, that are administering CFA programs, and I'm sure they're experiencing similar situations and wondering also what their plans are. Before I turn it over to the Department of State or DEC or anybody else, USDA, who's got some information here, maybe also we could look into the contingency accounts. I think there's more districts that aren't using them, and they're probably anticipating higher budgets right from the beginning. But in Bethany, maybe we looked into this in the past and I'm not recalling, but the 10% cap on contingency, if that is also something in the state finance law or somewhere we might be able to look into. Can that 10% be increased?
Yeah, I completely agree that is actually on my list of topics to consider for round 28. I think at this point for round 27, however, because it's already kind of locked into the RFP, I think our options might be limited, and we would have to, just as you said, kind of do some more digging to see if we have any latitude to increase contract amounts, once we get in at that point. While I guess, have the mic, I will also mention that, with the Ag Non-Point Source program specifically, districts may request up to 87.5% of the total project cost to be cost shared by the state. Because it is a highly competitive program, we often see the cost share percentage from the state that is lower than that, but, districts do have that option as well. And there is no cap on individual awards through the Ag Non-Point Source program. So that is something to keep in mind as you're developing your cost estimates for the program as well.
Hey guys, this is Chaz. I know you all missed me for sure, but we're seeing the same things. And Bethany, I understand that, but the problem that we're challenging now is, yes, we can ask for more money. However, then your cost effectiveness numbers go down, or ranking. And so we're finding it a struggle to try and figure out how much to ask for, but staying within those areas of making cost effectiveness work, and how to explain that in the grant application, but still have enough funding to be able to do it. And I know that we can't give anybody any more money. It's competitive. I get that for older contracts. But we do need to start thinking about what we can do to help people figure out what these costs are and how to manage them.
Chaz, that's a really good point. And, even prior to COVID, when closing out projects, reviewing final reports, I always focused in on the cost share percentages. What were the original percentages in the contract going into it? And then what were they with final costs? And routinely seeing, the landowner percentage go up dramatically throughout the course of the project. Some cases it's because they had a federal match come in, and that's a good thing. But overall, we've been talking about this as a staff, and Dale, thank you for bringing it up today. It really should be its own agenda topic, and let's make that happen soon. But how are we budgeting projects, and is there a way that we could be a little closer? And for the cost effectiveness aspect, really what we'd be doing is recalibrating across the whole program. So, our advisory members who are involved in these discussions at the committee level and the TAC level, will understand that the cost of doing business is rising. And if we're consistent, we can make a really good case. And same is true when it comes to state budget time as well. Small increases in the budget that we have available for the program may just be offsetting the rising costs, not allowing us to do more. So that's a story that we need to get out there as well.
Yeah, I think going forward, you can budget different, looking back at all the ones that are approved and signed and ready to build, and all of a sudden they got their bids come in and way higher than what even possibly dreamed of. And that's going to be a serious problem, or is a serious problem. So I would appreciate it if it could be looked into, if we can, the return funds, if it can be possibly used, if we get approval from whoever needs to be approving it. And not holding hopes for it, but I think we should at least look at what options we could do to help those that are already in that process want to get going on projects.
Yeah, thanks, Dale. We'll look into that. And there's also a lot of really great points made here in the chat, and we'll be keeping this as well so that we can look back through and see what districts have commented on. And before we get to AIM-based, just also, well, actually staying on the topic of AIM-based, Greg, if you're available, just chat a little bit about how we've set that program up so that there's certain benchmarks that can be made and reapplication to future rounds.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Brian. Shelley, thanks for that question, and Dale for teeing up the whole topic. And I realize, Shelley, some of your questions are very relevant and, broadly applicable across all our programs. I did pick up one thread, though, that might have indicated a focus that's in some part of your question on the AIM 16, the 2-year non-competitive AIM 16 cost share project, cost share program. And that's a little different than our other competitive programs in that for the cost share implementation projects, they have to wrap up at the end of the 2-year cycle. And so to build a mechanism for, inevitable times when projects can't be completed in 2 years, there's a little different mechanism in there. And if you want to, with the Genesee District, for instance, want to talk about that in detail, we can do that offline. But the idea there is that there's a mechanism for a farmer to essentially close out what they've done and then decide, yeah, I'd like to continue this project, and then reapply for the remaining portions of it in the next AIM 2-year cycle, which would be AIM 17 that we'll close out, that we'll talk about in a little bit. Certainly, there's also an option to say, hey, I didn't even start this project. The finances are nuts right now. I want to pull the plug on this right now, and you can stop a project too. But it's a little different sort of extension mechanism. It is a different extension mechanism than Ag 9-point source and CRF, but it is there and might release a little bit of pressure of what we're feeling with some specific AIM-based implementation projects.
Thanks, Greg. Any further discussion on this subject of cost rises beyond belief?
Well, we certainly will look into it. I think there are some examples of other programs in the department we can look at, and we'll bring back some more information next time we meet.
Great, appreciate it very much. All right, Greg, we'll give you round 17, Greg.
All right. Thank you, Dale, and the voting members. Let me share my screen. There we go. Hopefully, Dale, you can see my slides okay?
Everything's good.
Great, excellent, thank you. I'm going to keep it in sort of editing mode here just so I can highlight some things a little more easily. But first, I want to thank all the voting members and advisors and districts, the state committee staff, and our Ag and Markets contract and ethics attorneys for all the help along the way this winter in building off of information we've collected and ideas we've collected from AIM 16 and shaping them into what's the new next 2-year cycle of AIM called AIM 17. In the next few minutes here, it'll be more brief than the in-depth discussion at the May State Committee meeting, but we wanted to give a brief overview of AIM 17, and I will briefly underscore the changes to the program and contract policy that have taken place since our May State Committee discussion, and then request approval for the AIM 17 program and contract policy framework. And then at the end, I'll provide some steps that follow beyond that. So first off here, just a calibration on AIM 17. It's still non-competitive. Like Shelley mentioned, it still runs on a 2-year time step. And that 2-year time step is January 1st of 2022 through the end of 2023. Like AIM 16, the districts have continued to do excellent work in that. So the same architecture makes a lot of sense to carry forward to AIM 17. So you see it has a technical assistance track, which is what we're used to. That's what the AIM-based program has been since its inception. And that's to non-competitively support district staff in providing technical assistance to farms according to the AIM strategy. And that runs with 3 different funding options depending on the staff and the training that they have in a particular district. And for AIM 17, we're proposing that each cap for option A, B, and C is bumped up by a potential $10,000. So, and that's to allow for more technical assistance and or more testing services for soil health, or manure and compost nutrients. So if you add these together, this is really 140 for 2 years, 230 for 2 years, and option C is 180 for 2 years. So pretty similar with one addition here to AIM relative to AIM 16. And then in broad strokes, the Tier 4 track is also similar to AIM 16 in its basic structure, and we'll get into some of the changes that a lot of folks have been thinking about and giving us feedback on, which we appreciate in the coming slides. But it still offers a modest cost share implementation sub-program, if you will, track that has a $100,000 cap on the state share, an individual farm cap on projects of $50,000, up to 87.5%, and it's still based on priority projects that come out of Tier 3 plans or equivalent. And a big logistical detail in this 2-year cycling AIM-based program is that it's doable in 2 years. So that's the basic framework. And here are some key updates. This is a slide that's familiar to the folks who were at the May meeting or at the managers meeting last Monday. Thanks for that time, Dustin and the managers. We are indeed have built these updates in the program and contract policy, and some of this is work to be done once that overarching framework for AIM 17 is completed, and we then use that to design the sort of tactical tools of the AIM 17 program, like the spreadsheets and forms that are used for administering the program. I'll note an update here. There's some discussion at the managers meetings and good ones, and I just want to clarify that when a district is putting together their action plan due November 1st of 2021 for AIM 17, there'll be one line among the other tier and non-tier budget lines for them to set their goals, their plans, right? This is forecasting, work throughout the tiers and non-tiers for the next 2 years. There'll be one line there to put a general budget for these testing services. And again, as life happens through the 2-year cycle of AIM 17, that budget line, can be used for those testing services, or it could be used for technical assistance in a fluid way. And those will all run on flat rates for per test for reporting and payment simplicity. The next big piece, 2 big pieces to overview are the last 2 bullets there about eligibility for district-associated individuals, specifically for the Tier 4 cost share track implementation projects, and then a little update on some changes to a couple minor but important moving parts in the overall Tier 4 cost share implementation track design. Okay, so first, these next 2 topics are sort of, the major discussion points and updates relative to AIM 16. So I appreciate everybody's time and thought on these. The first is related to cost share track eligibility, project eligibility for district associated individuals. And so here is the language that's emerged for the program and contract policy based on these discussions. And it starts off that all farmers with an AIM Tier 3 plan or equivalent are eligible. And there's a caveat for district associated individuals. So employees, directors, or their relatives are also eligible, which is sort of a change in policy from AIM 16, which prohibited those individuals participation in cost share implementation projects. As long as, right, the underlying thread, it's a priority project through the planning process, and a conflict of interest plan has been developed for that individual or individuals. The conflict of interest plan is based on some farmland protection grant experience and the source water buffer program, and it essentially, there's three elements to it. It's what's the project ID, so we know which project this is associated with. Who are the individuals that have potential conflicts of interest based on, this updated definition I'll talk about in a bit. And then the third part is, what are the steps that that individual or individuals will take from project start through project end to avoid the conflict of interest. Those are three parts of that that form that'll be associated with Tier 4 cost share track projects that, in the instance that there's a district associated individual involved with the project. There's an update to this definition relative to our discussions at the May State Committee meeting, and I appreciate input from others and our ethics attorney on this. And really, this clause, which was their households or their immediate households in AIM 16, really is intended to be their relatives. And that comes with a definition from the New York State Public Officers Law, where that's, yes, that person that lives in their same household, that was there from AIM 16, but there's an expansion to any person who is a direct descendant of their grandparents or a spouse of that descendant. So, that would relate to siblings, for instance, or cousins of employees or directors. So that is the language being proposed for your approval this morning, and some of the related pieces that are in the program and contract policy. There's one other update from what was presented in May and the managers meeting last Monday. Remember, I should have said this earlier. We can have all these open discussions with AIM, the AIM-based program, because it's a non-competitive program. This would be, there'd be some recusals of our own here on the line if this were one of our competitive programs and the design of it. So there's one piece of program requirement that was on the slide back in May, which is gone, and that was a requirement for all districts to send us documentation that a sort of simple general overview announcement to the public had been made locally about the AIM-based program. So this is the AIM-based program, technical assistance, and so on. If you're interested, more information, contact the district, kind of thing. Through discussions with districts, we realized that maybe it was a little too much one size fits all, and there's other pathways. And so we removed that as a requirement, and but we'll still send a state level announcement about the overall offer, like we did for the offering for round 27 of the Ag Non-Point source, and certainly continue to support districts, in their ongoing efforts to expand capacity and work throughout their local communities. So that is the latest framework that's up for approval as part of the whole contract policy for the specific topic of eligibility for district associated individuals.
Does anyone have any questions or discussion before we move to the voting part?
There's one more topic, Dale, to layer in before that. I appreciate the pause there for questions.
All right.
Sorry, I've hidden the chat here. I will open that up and. All right, the last topic is the an updated design based on district feedback and really good ideas for the Tier 4 cost share track portion of the overall AIM-based program. And so overall, this is it's fairly similar to AIM-16, except that it allows more time and flexibility for a district to submit this part of the action plan, this Tier 4 cost share project package. In AIM-16, everything was due up front before the program started on November 1st, ahead of the contract start date on January 1st. And there was good discussion there that, hey, it doesn't always align with decision-making on the farm and just the real-life timing of pulling together an accurate and solid, this is kind of germane to our rising price discussion a little while ago, cost discussion a little while ago. Could we have some more flexibility built into the submittal of the granular details of those Tier 4 cost share projects? And we looked into it and saw that there was an opportunity to really hold this off or allow flexibility in that regard, until there was an implementation or a project payment request made. So that allowed us to streamline the action plan if a district chooses. They certainly have the option to float all technical assistance track and Tier 4 cost share track information in its entirety all at once on November 1st. But at a minimum, the budget for technical assistance and goals and a district board resolution supporting that. And once that's approved and there's a contract that's executed, the district then can submit for 25% advance of the technical assistance funds, because we have all the details for that budget in hand at this point. And then up through May 1st of 2022, and that's a date that we tested during the managers meeting last Monday, it makes some logistical sense from our view in terms of, not getting too deeply into the first construction season of a 2-year program, but not being so early that, it's going to be a while before a contract is executed, given that it just started January 1st of 2022. And I guess by consensus through silence, I don't know, Dustin, on the phone, May 1st, 2022 seems like a good internal deadline to set, allow a little more flexibility for these Tier 4 cost share projects to come into, proper decision making and form to then be submitted. A change here, a good point by a district was brought forward. We also had this in one foul swoop include the district to farmer contract or funding agreement. And that was so that you could send in the funding agreement, send in a claim for payment, and boom, all at once request this 90% Tier 4 cost share track payment. But given how there are legitimate ways, absolutely legitimate ways to operate these programs locally, and that didn't mesh with the sequence of how some districts do it. So we built in a stepwise mechanism here where the Tier 4 cost share track package would include the following items: a district board resolution for those specific cost share track projects being submitted, a new, I will revise this, SW implementation budget worksheet with landowner commitment signatures. You will recall that the current one has both the SW budget as well as the farm expenditure summary down the bottom. I'm going to pull those apart and create a landowner commitment signature piece there. Important supplemental elements here, CRIS maps and forest buffer establishment plans when relevant. And then if it happens to be a project that involves a district associated individual, this is when they would send us the conflict of interest plan for that person or persons. So that's all in, and then the district can also send at the same time their district landowner funding agreement and a claim for payment, or they can wait until that, for instance, bids are all in and, they have a firm number for all parties and it's, locked into that contract with the farmer. So a small but important change there. And then the rest is as we planned it and is very similar to AIM 16. So I thank you for going into the grains there with me a little bit, but I wanted to make that distinction since some good comments from districts last Monday, and this is the first time we've had for you to get an update on that. So Dale, that is that's the last topic, and the final broad design for the slightly different approach to the Tier 4 cost share track design. I apologize. I think someone just wanted to ask a question.
Yeah, Greg, this is Dustin. I wanted to thank you again for participating in our managers meeting and being willing to face the barrage of questions that you got, and I'm sure the phone calls and questions you got afterwards. A couple things that came up at the managers meeting that there are some district managers that were concerned about opening up the funding for district employees specifically, and the directors and family, because it's going to be very hard to, I can see how it could be difficult to fully separate yourself if you're a district employee and say, I'll never talk about this while we're in the office. I'll take the day off so we can discuss it on my day off. And, there's passing the smell test with some of these things. So that was something that came up, and, there was also the option that seemed to be presented at that meeting that if a district, if this passes as written, if a district chooses, they could still go stricter and say, we're not going to allow our board members or our staff to apply for the funds. And my other question was going to be, could you also do it on a partial basis if you say, well, we can't really make it work with the staff, but we could do it with a board member? Could they limit it partially and say, well, we won't let district staff apply, but board members and extended relatives can apply? Because I could see districts wanting to possibly do one or the other, just for ease of trying to manage these applications.
Yeah, thank you for that, Dustin. Those are great points and a good question too. This could always be made more strict by local district policy, as is my understanding.
Okay, because
that would apply to those various scenarios that you hypotheticals that you put out.
Okay, because I realize some districts are just not going to want to deal with it in general, and that they're voting, their board is deciding whether or not they're going to do that. But my concern extends out to the new definition of relative. Well, not new, but the new to us definition of relative that we didn't realize before, being that cousins, if you have the same grandparents, and that cousins of board members could not apply if this does not pass. And that was my concern was, you've got a lot of counties where a board member, they may have half a dozen cousins that are farmers within the county that all have the same grandparents, and then that could, make it so that their extended family could not apply for the funding. So we just wanted to point it out that could be a tripping point for some districts that I'm sure probably already have contracts with individuals that are extended relations, and we didn't consider them in the original application as family members or direct relatives. So I don't know if any other districts want to speak up on what they would plan to do, or what they were thinking if this passes as it's proposed, or if everybody seems happy with it. I'll be quiet and let it go.
Dustin, I will say that extended relative definition, certainly for us, when looking at it, made it even more clear that we needed to have
a path forward for broader participation. Because of that definition, certainly it necessitated us taking a much closer look, even though the committee asked us to do it for round 17. Became even more clear to us that we needed to put this option in front of the committee for consideration. Following other programs that have this type of conflict of interest format, and being able to address any potential conflicts. So, and just as Greg mentioned, certainly if we set round 17 policy this way, certainly still allows districts to determine local policies that are more strict. So we just wanted to make sure that that was out there, because it wasn't a broad unanimous type of vote or any kind of consensus among managers. There's concerns in both directions, but we wanted to make sure we set a path forward that it can be done and done properly. So with recusals and documentation and setting forth a little bit more clear path.
Thank you.
I believe that you need to have a plan in place at the district level so that relatives, members can participate in programs. If you don't, you're going to limit future members for your boards. And we need to open it up to everybody participating with the right guidance and recommendations. Anything else, Greg?
Dale, Scott.
Yep.
Could an adjoining district manage an application for a district that might have a conflict of interest?
Brian, you want to answer that? Or Greg?
Yeah, Greg, I'll let you go first.
I'll take a shot. So Scott, I think this is a scenario that we should directly, discuss with our ethics attorney as well. And that's not the only one. You raised a good question in that I have mentioned before. This is a in development a parallel process when we get down to the individual scenario level of it beyond the broad language that's on the page there. And I think there's some caveats maybe with district employees and their decision-making power that we've got to further consider. And this kind of gets into the substance of these conflict of interest guidelines that we're drafting. To your question there, though, initially, I guess that's background, and I didn't give you an answer, but I told you we're going to think about it, right? The initial thought that comes to mind is that they would develop a conflict of interest plan. So they're still district associated, and they would just document, right out and open, that, hey, this is my association and this is what I'm going to do. If they were external to the district that was actually doing the project, the conflict of interest plan in the answer I just gave you there would be pretty simple, right? Because they wouldn't be working on the clock in that district, wouldn't be in board meetings, all of the actions that limit participation in a project when it's associated with, my own farm.
Yeah, Greg, I think you covered it pretty well there. Thank you for that. And, just as we talked about, we're setting kind of the broad framework, and that will allow this to happen. Districts would disclose interest of a particular individual if they had a potential conflict, develop this conflict of interest plan, and we would review that and, move forward accordingly. Or potentially ask for more information, or, if we needed to come to a conclusion that the conflict isn't able to be addressed. But, with that, the other part of the recusal process
let's, say if it's a part of it, it's a district technician or something to that effect that is also going to be working on aspects of the contract. The recusal is only for their affiliated farm, not for participating in the entire project. So, there are, some nuances in how this will be, potentially implemented. But, right now we're setting the framework and providing the policy and the sideboards.
Hey guys, this is Chaz. I just wanted to say thank you for having this lengthy discussion and answering a lot of questions for districts on this, just so we want to make sure we're doing it correctly. We're one of those districts who actually did vote yesterday to not allow district directors or staff to apply, just because we had already advertised that they couldn't for this year, and we didn't want to muddy the waters by saying all of a sudden that they can, and we already have so many applications in. But that's a choice we made, and I know Madison County did similar. So just if anybody wants to chat about that, I just wanted to throw it out there.
Chad, thank you for that. And Scott, I just wanted to circle back to see if that discussion was adequate, realizing that we're continuing to do homework on it with our ethics attorney.
Further discussion, anyone? Could I get a motion then to approve the AIM-based program, round 17?
So moved.
Could I get a second?
Second.
We'll go to voting. Erica?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Scott?
Yes.
Approved. Thank you, everyone that did all the work. It's going.
Dale and fellow voting members, thank you. And thanks for all the partners who have helped us hone this. Dale, I just want to take a few minutes and talk about next steps here. We'll continue to work with our contract and ethics attorneys on the kind of tactical review, if you will, of the program and contract policy and tools that are associated with that. We're going to continue aggressively inquiring about the approval of the budget for this entire AIM-17 offering. And if that STAR falls in line, we're on schedule to release in July or early August, really as soon as everything is ready to roll. And when that happens, you will know about it, district, and everyone in the state committee here. And we'll have some, overview training webinar opportunity there, like we did with AIM-16. And in the meantime, like has been mentioned in a few different ways by different districts on the phone, keep all of the good work going on your technical assistance in AIM-16 to tee up projects for AIM-17, and also wrapping up those AIM-16 projects here in the last construction season. And the regional coordinators and yours truly are very much
Lost you, Greg. Lost your voice. Nope. I'm still not hearing Greg. Anybody?
Nope, I can see him. Not yet.
Nope.
Calibrating.
Still nothing.
My reading lips is not very good.
We can come back. We can come back to yep. Yeah.
Greg, appreciate it very much what you did. A lot of work on this, and it does help give us a way to move forward with more participation from districts. Before we go into voting, staff advisory comments, is there anything else we want to bring up, anyone?
I think we're ready to go to reports.
Yeah, I
The
think so.
reports.
All right, I'll start with Erica. You have anything?
Sure, quickly, just certainly encouraged by the progression of the soil health bill through the legislature over the recent months. And then the other piece I just wanted to highlight was as part of the Genesee River Watershed Demo Farm Network, we'll be hosting a field day August 31st at Mulligan Farm in Avon, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And that will be an invite going out early July from Vista and others on our team to invite district folks and others as well and for us to participate in that. So more to come in early July. That's all.
Great, thanks. Dave, you got anything?
No, I've got nothing.
Scott?
Lance sent out a questionnaire as far as regarding our annual meeting, whether it be face-to-face or web, and I think we had 43 respondents, and it sounded like many are in favor of having a face-to-face meeting this year. So hopefully that'll be a go. It'd be nice to see everybody in person instead of through a screen. And I think that's about it.
Great, thanks. Turn it over to you, Brian.
All right, thank you. And thanks, Scott. I just got an email from Blanche asking if we'd be able to attend. I'm going to tentatively say probably in limited fashion, but I'm certainly hoping we can be there in person. So I will respond to her after the meeting. Okay, so we are running a little bit behind, but with that said, certainly if any advisory member has got anything to report, just take your phone off mute and go ahead instead of running down through the list. I figured I would do it this way just to save a little bit of time, but please, by all means, provide your report if you have one.
This is Stephanie from Department of State. I'll go really quickly. There's not too much, but just to reiterate that the CFA is open for applications through July 31st, and watershed planning implementation projects for those approved watershed plans are eligible. And yeah, that's it. Just a reminder that is open, as well as and I'm sure DEC will chime in, but the WQIP also is open too. So
Great, thank you. Is there a Q&A deadline or anything else that you want us to report on for that?
Oh, yeah, good point. Yep, Q&A deadline is Friday, this Friday actually, the 18th, and we'll get the answers out by July 6th. We should have those.
Great, thank you.
Yep. That's it for me.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Actually, since you mentioned DEC, I will just kind of briefly go through and ask if DEC's got anything to add to that or any other issues.
Nope. This is Julie. I was just gonna say that the CFA is out also.
Excellent. Julie, you're gonna be at the Quick Me meeting on Thursday?
I'm not. I have a scoring session for something else, unfortunately.
Okay. I was hoping I'd see you there. Okay, thank you. Anything else from DEC? All right. Thank you.
Hey, Brian?
Yes, sir.
Hey, Dustin, CDEA. Just
All
wanted
right,
to-
Dustin.
a quick little update. I know Envirothon Committee is looking for folks to volunteer for Secretary, Activities Coordinator, and Volunteer Coordinator for the upcoming National Envirothon in New York State. We have an ESCCP erosion class review class coming up July 26th and 27th in Horseheads, along with an exam. Con skills workshop planning is moving right along. Classes are set, getting instructors confirmations in. We have our next meeting is July 28th. We're hoping for a southwestern New York location. We're just looking into the details on that, and then we'll send it out. And one thing that came up at our employee association meeting was some concerns with the DEC Forest Owners Grant that came out recently. We had a couple districts express a little bit of concern that it requires landowners to submit through the grants gateway themselves, and districts cannot apply on behalf of them. So individual homeowners, landowners will need to create an account and do all the good, fun grants gateway stuff that we get to deal with on a regular basis on their own. So we're looking, I spoke with Scott Fickbaum and some other district folks, and we're looking to try and set up a meeting with DEC Forestry to discuss that and see if there's any way we can make it a little more friendly to the landowners, because I'm sure it's going to be very difficult for the landowners to navigate the grants gateway portal, especially when folks that have a regular experience with it seem to come across hurdles, I shall say, time to time. So that's a topic that's come up. I don't know if you guys have heard anything comment wise on that. And that's it for CDA.
Justin, drop me a quick email on that, because the folks that are administering that program are those that we work with extensively, the Ag and Forestry panel, and we've got some good contacts and relationships there. So
okay,
I'd like to help facilitate that.
All right, I will do that. I know Scott Fickbaum is going to work on getting a little meeting together so we can all, discuss it and see if there's anything the districts or the employee association can do to help.
Sounds good. Thank you, Justin.
Yep.
Good
Anyone
afternoon,
else?
Brian. This is
If I
Blake.
can- Oh, thanks, Blake. Go for it.
Yes, from NRCS standpoint, I missed a few meetings. Sorry about that. Kind of double booked on every other Tuesday. So we do have a new chief. The acting chief is now the chief. So Terry Cosby, that was the state conservationist in Ohio, is now the chief of NRCS. So we're excited about that, to have somebody internally lead the agency for us or on our behalf, and look forward to getting him up to New York at some point to view some of the good things NRCS and our partners are doing around the state as well. So look forward to that. The cover crop standard was left the same by the chief. I don't know if that's been gone over at this meeting or not, but that has been left the same, unchanged. Moving forward, the chief has decided that he's not willing to make any changes per. I think a lot of the comments came from Ag and Markets and SWCC on some of the issues with the potential changes from the cover crop standard that we were going to go with, or proposed anyways. So nothing has changed on that. And then, I didn't want to take much time on the on this whole payment, COVID pandemic discussion, but from a federal standpoint, we haven't seen a lot of cancellations or terminations of contracts from a producer standpoint. Understanding that our costs are probably lower than what it needs to be right now for what we're paying out on, but we do have the option of modifying our contracts out a year or two beyond where we are today to try to capture some of that. And so we've been doing that discussion here for a while, but our bigger discussion right now is on our smaller acreage payments. Our payment schedule is not matching up, so we're from across the country, not just New York. So we're just trying to capture how we're going to do some of our, conservation planning and contracting on some of these smaller acreage stuff, and then, but also matching up those payments to those needs as well. So we look forward to that conversation, and if there's any other questions for NRCS, let us know.
you, Blake. Great information. Thanks for sending that notice out on the cover crop standard. We believe we did send that out statewide, and that was great that folks listened to the many comments that they received and left that unchanged. Thanks also for the information on cost overruns and contracts. That's certainly interesting. And let's talk offline a little bit so you can move forward and address some of those issues. And appreciate it very much, Blake. Thanks for attending today.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, committee.
All right. Any other advisory member reports? All right. Thank you. I'm going to move to staff reports. I am going to just call on first Tim just to give us a quick update on the engineering needs and survey and discussions we've been having.
Yeah, sure. So just to follow up on the kind of subcommittee on engineering meeting we had a few weeks ago, two of the action items were to survey the districts for what their engineering needs were, and also to create a list of consultants that are interested in working with districts around the state. So on that engineering needs survey, we've had 46 responses. So thank you to all the districts who took the time to fill that out. The deadline is passed, so I'm going to compile the results and get that out to the little subcommittee, and hopefully we'll meet again in a few weeks to discuss those results and, you know, try and develop a priority list for the types of engineering solutions we could pursue in the future. For the consultant directory, I have about 20 firms and individuals that I've personally contacted, and they're willing to be on the directory. I have a few more that I need to follow up with that didn't respond to my first inquiry. So hopefully I'll have that out to the districts in a couple of weeks. Okay, that's my report.
Thank you, Tim, for that update. Appreciate it very much. That was a great response to the survey too. That's
yeah,
a lot of districts. Thank you to all districts for responding. Okay, before I want to finish up with Jason, but is there anybody else, any other staff that has anything to report to the committee? Okay, Jason, floor is yours.
All right, thank you, Brian. Hey everyone, it's Jason. I just wanted to let committee members and our partners know that this is my last state committee meeting. I have accepted a position as Environmental Analyst 1 at the Lake George Park Commission, and I'll be leaving the department on Friday, June 25th. I want to say it's been my pleasure working in this role and managing data for such great programs. One of my favorite parts of the job was having meetings like this where we shared ideas and updated each other on what we're working on, and I really appreciate all the times that I had to present and to show data in our projects. I wish we could be in person today, but it looks like we might be crossing that bridge soon. So I hope you guys get back to it really soon. And there's not enough time to thank all the people who have helped me in this role, but I really want to mention Greg, Bethany, and Brian have been excellent supervisors and role models. I sincerely appreciate all their thoughtful feedback, guidance, and motivating words during my time here. I look forward to continuing my work with them and everyone here through my career. If you ever need me, just type Coquinos into Outlook. There can't be many of us. So thank you again for this incredible opportunity. Please let me know if there's anything I can do to help in these last couple of weeks. And it's really just been an excellent time. Thank you all.
Jason, it's been a great pleasure having you working with us, and I really have appreciated all the analytical work you've done, and we'll miss it. I don't want you to go, but I do wish you the very best in your new endeavor.
Thank you, Dale. I appreciate that.
Yes, thank you. Ditto, Jason. And I know just where you're going to be. You're gonna love that job up there in Lake George, and I see lots of opportunities to collaborate with the Park Commission around the watershed issues up north in Lake George and the Champlain. So you're not going far, and I just want to thank you for everything you brought to this position, and everybody who's been in this position before you have moved the ball forward and gave so much to it. And certainly, you're no exception. Really appreciate everything, and best wishes.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Anyone
other
else?
staff? Oh, go ahead, Dale.
Anyone else want anything to say or anything to bring up?
Conservation districts and other partners on the phone, public comments?
Next meeting date?
That was the, absolutely. So I have proposed here third Tuesday in July, July 20th, 10 a.m. start. The location and/or remote option to be determined. Let us work on that a little bit, see if we can't get a few people together. You know, pretty much, I would say be prepared for both options. Most likely, however, in July, you know, there will be a remote presence if we are able to get a few of us together in a location. But and then most likely we'll meet in July and then take a month off for August, and then meet up again in September.
Voting members, July 20th, okay?
Looks good for me.
I'll make it work.
Right.
Excellent. July 20th
Okay.
it is. All right, thank you everyone for everything today, and we are adjourned.
Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great rest of the day.
Right.